All right, let's go.
Yeah, we're gonna get a sweet, sweet victory. Yeah.
God bless you didn't have two Mallies in hand. He doesn't play Fader. He plays T-Roar. What the
Oh my
fuck?
goodness, he has them. He has them all.
He's the best player of all time. What the hell? I'm tilted.
That's crazy. That's I just.
All right, welcome back to the channel, guys. I am here with a replay analysis video. This is my first time actually doing it this way, but this was from BeastMode Soccer Series 5. So again, if you don't know, BeastMode has a Discord server and he holds tournaments on Fridays. The date is subject to change, but usually they're on Friday nights, and they are usually around 16 players. I believe there's also talks of expanding that to like 32 players or maybe 64 if it grows to that amount. But I played in the last one, so this was the week before the 3v3 Edison tournament, Gladiators of Edison. And I used the frog deck that I basically used for the 3v3, but at the time it was a bit more primitive than the final product that I ended up using for the 3v3. So I wanted to go over my matches because I ended up winning this tournament, and I realized then that this deck is not only like really good, but it could use some small tweaks. I did only get to play 2 matches, so for whatever reason, there were a lot of weird things going on that day that had never happened to any of his other tournaments, where people were like dropping out or showing up almost 30 minutes late and stuff like that. But there's going to be things in place to make sure that those things don't happen next time, and I look forward to that. In any event, this first replay is against McDog. I have no idea what he's playing, so I'm going in completely blind. Oh, also, before we get started, I guess it makes sense that I show you the actual deck list that I'm using. So this is what it looked like for this tournament. Again, it is very similar to the one I played in the 3v3, but there are just some things that ended up changing later on. I ended up removing the Unifrog. I ended up going up to 3 copies of Enemy Controller. I played a main deck Soul Exchange. I upped the Battle Fader to 2. What else? I moved MST to the side deck. And I think that those are the main ones. Also moved Malicious Edge to 1 copy because that card is just not that good, and I never want to see more than one of it, honestly. I think that playing just 4 heroes with E-Call and Rhoda is enough of a hero package to have 6 cards in your deck. And honestly, 3 of the cards get you to the rest of the cards. Like if you draw Stratos, Rhoda, or E-Call, you just kind of get to the rest of your deck. So you don't need to play a ton of heroes, in my opinion, for the hero Junk Frog deck to function properly. And it is pretty rare that you will have dead Miracle Fusions for long. So I think that the Frog engine is just so strong, especially after you thin your deck out. Then it becomes like, it's probably the best deck after you resolve Substitute fully. Like when you do the full combo and get all the frogs out your deck and you're down like 8 to 10 cards. I would probably say it's the best deck because it's just top decking bombs. But anyway, that's a conversation for another time. All right, I'm only going to show my hand because I think it's important, because of the deck that I'm playing against, that we just look at what I do, because I don't really know what I'm on, and it's going to be, this is a very confusing replay, to be honest. So let's just get into it, and we can talk once I'm there. Okay, so I lose the die roll, and my hand is very good. Like, honestly, one of the best hands. The only thing I could ask for more is heroes and Miracle Fusions and stuff like that. But for an opening hand, if you see this, you can play the game. You have defense, you have a Monarch, you have access to Treeborn Frog. You have everything you want, basically, outside of access to your hero engine. But again, this deck is so strong, even without the hero engine, that this is just perfect. So our opponent just sets 3 back row, and I'm thinking, okay, is this some kind of anti-meta? God forbid, is this Glad Beast? I don't really have a read on anything yet. And so the normal play is just, get access to Treeborn Frog. That's like the order of operations with the Frog deck. You always just kind of want to get access to Treeborn Frog as soon as possible. It is the best card in your entire deck, and the sooner you gain access to it, the better, because every turn it's a +1 with your engine. So now this is really weird. Our opponent opts to trap hole the Swap Frog, which is basically the equivalent of a minus, because I am going to send Treeborn Frog regardless. This obviously doesn't negate the effect of Swap Frog, and Treeborn Frog is going to come back on the next turn, basically like in a weird way replacing the Swap Frog. So it kind of replaces itself in a delayed way. but this is still not a good trade to make. So I sent Treeborn, and I don't really have to do anything because my hand has Gores in it. It has Threatening Roar. He also doesn't have a monster clearly, and if he, you know, at first there's an idea that he could be on Black Wings and needs me to put a monster in the field so he can summon Sirocco. But when he trap hold my Swap Frog, I'm like, there's no way this guy is playing Black Wings, right? Like that's just not. First of all, trap hold in the main deck. I don't think I've ever seen a deck do this, so I was very confused right here. So draws and sets a new back row. So still Bricknall monsters, it seems. Okay, so now I have Miracle Fusions galore, but my hand is still perfectly fine. So bring back Treeborn Frog, just, you know, tribute for Ryza. It's our only play. Okay, so right here, I asked if the summon is successful. I think that one thing that people do often in Edison format, and I think it's kind of cringe, is they will summon a Monarch and declare effect and target a card immediately and then get Solemn Judgment or Pulling Rugged. I always summon my Monarchs and ask if the summon is successful first, because I don't want to give away what I want to target. And then my opponent decides they want to Solemn Judgment. It's just extra information for them to know like what I was going after. So every time you play me, I don't care if you find it annoying or not, I'm going to summon a Monarch and I'm going to go summon Monarch, thumbs up, like that type of thing. Or is the summon successful? Like any kind of way to confirm that, is this Monarch actually touching the field? Because I need to know if it's okay. And then, you know, with Pulling Rug is fine because you have to target anyway before they can activate Pulling a Rug. But in the case of like Solemn Judgment, I see people often summon Monarch, declare effect, target a back row, and then the opponent's like, oh, well, I'll use my Solemn that's not the back row you targeted because I don't want that to go now. I know what you're after. And so I just really, really hate that. Anyway, we roll a die, return a back row, and get in for 24. He deprisons. So this is what I love. When you're playing the Monarch deck, you want to trade exactly the way this Ryza just traded with back rows, right? So I spun a card to the top of his deck, so he lost a card, and then he deprisoned the Ryza, so he lost another card. So my Ryza is officially a 2-for-1 because he is down the card that's on the top and the deprison, and I only lost the Ryza. And because Treeborn Frog is free for me, like it's just going to come back every single turn, this is just not a real 2-for-2 trade, right? Like it's never going to be 2-for-2. Like you could argue like, oh, you lost your Treeborn Frog and the Ryza, but that's not like really a thing. All right, so he's just re-upping on back rows even more. And at this point, I'm like, this game is pretty much over. I draw Stratos, I played 3 copies, so I was really happy to see this. My hand is already just insane, and now it got more insane. So, again, trading favorably here. This is just another, you know, plus for me, minus for my opponent, however you want to look at it. But like, bottomlessing Stratos, it can be good. Don't get me wrong, because I don't have, right now, at this very moment, I don't have a hero in the grave. So he is cutting me off of Miracle Fusion this turn, even though I don't think I would activate it into no monsters. I typically like to save this card for when they actually have a monster. It doesn't lose value. Yeah, so I search Malicious Edge since I don't have, at this current time, I don't have a Monarch, and I consider this guy to be a searchable Monarch. And the other thing is that Ocean, because he just banished my Stratos, it doesn't make sense to search Ocean, and Infernal Prodigy doesn't really do anything for my hand because I already have access to Treeborn Frog and I don't really need that. So this is the best thing to search at the time. Just in case he ever draws a monster and I want to, you know, I want to summon this guy and get Miracle Fusion live. Okay. Here's where Junk Synchron comes in. So this is a really good display of why Junk Synchron is broken, but there's also some technical stuff that goes wrong here, I would say. So I summon Junk Synchron, a target Swap Frog, of course. It's the only thing in my graveyard. And I typically will, when I do this play, when my opponent, especially when they have no aggro whatsoever, they have no monsters on the field, I love doing this and then just bouncing the Junk Synchron to my hand. Like, it's one of my most common plays. So I target swap, and it comes out on the field, and my opponent immediately flips Torrential Tribute. And I'm like, Okay, so here is where it gets kind of awkward because I would like if they said, are you using priority when I summon swap instead of just immediately flipping turn to tribute as soon as it touches the field, because that's not how the game works. Swap Frog can bounce as soon as it's summoned and it has priority to do so. So I'm going to bounce my Junk Synchron, which is what my intent is anyway. And he's like, what's going on? And then I have to explain it has priority on summon to bounce. So I discard my second Treeborn Frog in end phase. I don't want to set Threatening Roar. He doesn't even have a monster. And if he does have a monster, I'd rather drop Gores. So right here, I just insulate myself from, I don't know, random DD Crow or something. I don't even know what he's playing still. I've only seen trap cards. And at this point, I am currently 6 cards to his 4, and he went first. So this is like really, really bad. Like I'm +2, basically. And he went first. So he's going to draw to 5, but then I'm going to draw to 7 and bring back Treeborn Frog and have 8 cards. So it's going to be 5 to 8 when I draw for turn, basically. All right, so I draw Ocean, just giving me access to more of my hero engine. I really don't need Ocean here, but it's still nice to have. So we bring back Treeborn Frog, and here is where I'm continuing to do my Junk Synchron shuffle. I'm thinking, I'm like, well, you already used Torrential, so I don't really need to do much here as far as like bouncing it immediately because I don't really think anything can go wrong. So I said, thinking on summon. And I'm like, all right, no priority. So we'll swing for 13, just get some damage in. Then I'll bounce it. And again, this is just like the most annoying thing because when your opponent doesn't have aggro and you just start gaining pluses, like I'm trying to just flood the field. Like next turn I can bring back my Treeborn Frog and have 2 of them on the field, which normally you couldn't do. But if I can just flood the field with monsters, it'll just further insulate me throughout the course of the game. So that's what I'm going for. I'll set Threatening just because I don't want to discard anything, to be perfectly honest. I think that at this point, like I already have access to Treeborn on the field. Now I'm just going to keep doing the same thing. Okay, so here, still haven't seen a monster, just seeing, a bunch of trap cards. And I don't know if his deck plays like 10 monsters or something, if it's like a really low monster count, or if he's genuinely, he plays like a good amount of monsters and he's actually bricking with the worst hand he's ever seen. I'm not really sure. And I can't really care either. But I do want to get the game over because I don't like seeing this many back row. It is a little scary to see like 4 back row could turn very quickly if this is something like Glad Beast, right? Like this could easily get out of hand. But as you can see, these are some really random cards here. I don't know what they are. So as I'm playing the game, I don't know any of these. So I decided to make an android and we go for an attack and I get Dimension Walled. So right here, this tells me a lot, or at least I thought it did. I thought that he was playing some kind of burn deck now, like some weird burn deck though, but I don't see Dimension Wall being played as just a regular card in a regular deck, right? Like this kind of scares me a little bit when I saw this, and it made me happier that I actually summoned Android because I want to gain some of that life back. And then he's like, end of battle phase. I'm like, okay, what's about to happen? Are you going to evenly match me or something? Like, what's going on? He's like, okay, I'll compulse your guy, which is fine. I think he could have just waited till the, like I say, entering end phase to do that, but sure. So now I won't be getting any life back. And on the end phase, I pitch Malicious Edge. I've given up on him drawing a monster. I don't think it's ever going to happen at this point. So I decide I want to have access to my Miracle Fusions. I'm tired of this game. I have 2 Treeborns in the grave, and I also have Swap Frog. So at this point, like, let's just get the show on the road. He has 3 cards to, again, I now have double his cards. He's going to draw to 4, and then I'm going to draw to 8 again with Treeborn in my draw. So, I'm literally going to be at double 4 to 8. So I draw a dead e-call, which again, honestly, this doesn't even matter because I've already accepted that I'm discarding cards on my end phase. So I'm probably just going to discard that too. So I use my frog, a center frog, activate Miracle. I get my first absolute 0 out here. And I do this because I have Ocean in my hand, so I'm not afraid if anything happens to the 0. This was a weird like misclick thing where for some reason 0 just got sent to the grave immediately and I had to put it back. Okay. So going into battle phase, attack, and it gets compulsed. So I'm like, all right, cool. So now I am getting kind of low as far as I only have 2 heroes left in my entire deck. I have an Ocean and an Infernal Prodigy, but I don't have access to the Infernal Prodigy out of these 25 cards. So draws, sets yet another back row. So now it's just like, what is happening, right? Like this is just an obnoxious deck at this point. And I also have accepted that this game is over. Like the game is over. Whenever this happens, whenever you just have this much card advantage, a player like me, I'm not going to fumble this. This is classic Yu-Gi-Oh, like really old school Yu-Gi-Oh, where I'm just going to grind you out of all of your cards slowly because you drew pretty bad and there's not really much for me to do except literally use the bare minimum to take away your cards favorably throughout the course of the game. It's something that frogs are very good at in general. Like this right here, for example. Me summoning a Unifrog is so much pressure when you have 3 back row and no monsters. So he goes 1 for 1 with that, which is great. I keep him at the exact same card advantage, and so he's going to draw to 4, and I'm still going to have my 8 cards when I draw. So finally, we see a monster. It is Cyber Dragon. It's like, okay. And DD Warrior Lady, which means that he actually had a monster and did not want to commit it to the field. So I've been holding this Gore since turn 1, and Gore's has been super bored. So I'm obviously going to drop it right here. No time like the present. So I drop the Gore's. I get a 2100 token. Draw for turn, substitute. Actually a pretty good draw. Bring back Treeborn. Switch to attack. So here's the thing. I am actually a little nervous right here. And I was thinking about things like Magic Cylinder. And what if I clear his field and he tries to dimension wall me again and all this other stuff? I was like, man, what if his win condition is like, I just want to get you low? Because look at how low my life points actually are without him ever really doing much to me. Like they just kind of got low from a combination of D-wall and 1 direct attack from Cyber Dragon. And now I'm already at 35. So that is a little scary. And I'm not a fan of where my life is considering that he plays weird cards like this. But, yeah, so I just put Gore's in attack mode and attack into just to try to get the +1 and deal some more damage, try to get the game over with. At this point, he's down to 2 cards. I'm not even going to count at this point. It doesn't even matter. So like he said, I'm just going to do full frog combo, basically. Yep, so I full dupe block here. And, I mean, this is just one of the most broken setups you could have. Like, I have a really big monster insulated behind a dupe block, so I can just run my aggro through this guy, and then these guys will just prevent you from doing anything, even though there isn't really much he could do top decking. So everything's going through. So that's a monster. So I'm like, okay, cool. Now you're setting monsters. What's that? Thunder King. Iron Phase finally discarded this e-call that I drew a while ago. He's at 3,400. So I have brain control in my hand. And I thought about, okay, now I'm attacking directly, right? And it wasn't dimensional wall the last time I attacked directly. So I was like, he's setting new back row. I'm just going to put the 2100 token in attack mode because it's the same 2-turn clock. Like me attacking with Gore's and me attacking with this doesn't really change much if I'm being honest, especially because I don't really have to worry about brain control in his deck. So doing 2100 here is perfectly fine. And look at that. I baited out a compulse. So it's like, all right. And that is now, is that the 3rd? Yeah, that's the 3rd compulse. He summons Breaker. And I'm like, oh, cool. Thanks. So I'll take Breaker. And this is more of me just trading favorably with all of his cards. So I lose brain control, but he's going to end up losing the Breaker, which is his only monster. It's really, really good. and that gets bottomless, but I still have a hero in the grave, so my Miracle Fusion is still alive. And he's at 300, so here's where I just decide, you know what? I'm just going to attack with these 3 guys. It insulates me from any crazy damage when it comes to dimensional barrier, or not dimensional barrier, from dimensional wall or magic cylinder, and it's also just game. All right, on to game 2. So my opening hand is actually really, really good against any kind of weird anti-meta, because that's, at this point, that's what I assume he's on. If he's playing Thunder Kings and a shit ton of back row, I just have to assume that this is some kind of anti-meta deck. And look at what has happened. So turn 1, D Fisher, King Tiger Wanku in the back row. It's very, very anti-meta. Okay, so my hand is absolutely cracked. Like, I don't really have to do anything. This game is just going to come to me. And that's exactly what we're going to do. So I just set Dust Tornado. This is the most obvious play in Yu-Gi-Oh! If your opponent just sets 1 back row in the frog deck and you have a back row, you should be very afraid, because this is what we're probably all going for. Frog players only want one thing, and it's disgusting. He attacks with King Tiger first, I take it. He attacks with Thunder King, I Dust Tornado the back row that I do not know, because I don't really care about the D Fisher. Gores is just too good by itself, so I just need to make sure that this isn't something weird. But yeah, he deals 19, I get a 1900 token, and even if his back row happened to be Starlight Road here, it doesn't matter at all, because the Gores can already kill the Stardust, and then this 1900 token can kill King Tiger Wanku, and I could also Caius after that if I wanted to deal with the Thunder King too, or if I wanted to deal with the D Fisher. So I just have like complete control of the game. So Heavy Storm, Super Blowout. So here, I now have 4 cards in hand and technically 2 cards on the field. So I have 6 cards to his 4. So again, he went first, and I'm the one who has +2 at this point, and I'm also going to kill both of these monsters. Unless, of course, he had Honest, which I don't believe you, because you're playing D Fisher. So now he's down to just 2 cards, and that is just my Gores card advantage, right? Like, I have 2 cards on the field to match the 2 cards in hand and all of these extra cards. So I'm going to go full combo at this point, because why not get access to the best card in my deck, my Treeborn Frog? And it looks like I went for a sublock, and that's because whenever you have your opponent kind of down and out, their card advantage is really low, you don't need to fully thin your deck out and do the dupe block. You can actually go for this instead, because this is a lot of card advantage next turn when I go bring back Treeborn Frog, and I can turn it into a swap frog, or I could turn it into a dupe frog and do a full dupe block. So I, seeing that he is almost top decking, decided that I don't need to stop you from attacking, because 1, what would you even be attacking Gores with anyway? And 2, how are you going to break this where you have to attack the dupe frog in order to get to the Gores? So it's like a lot that has to happen for this to not be effective, and I just don't believe that with 3 cards this is going to be possible. Like, even if he drew DD War Lady here, right? It's like DD War Lady attack, banish the dupe frog, and then the DD War Lady's gone. I go draw, bring back Treeborn Frog, tribute Treeborn Frog for Substitute, bring out another dupe frog if I want it, or bring out a swap frog that I left in deck, because there's only 2 swap frogs here, which means I left 1 in deck. So I draw Junk Synchron. Pretty good draw. I don't really need it though, because I already have this sweet Caius. So I'm just going to Caius his face down monster. And then we're going to use Substitute to get that swap frog out the deck and bounce the Caius to our hand. I don't want to draw that dupe frog, so I also decided to send that to the graveyard when I summon the swap frog, because at this point, I don't need any kind of dupe block. He's just basically out of the game. So I've given up on that altogether. And also, he still, if he has to attack, it would just be this monster. So this is just really strong to have this whole setup now going. And like I said, the game was pretty much over from turn 1. So yeah, this is where this kind of got out of hand a little quickly. Even though I don't think I'm at any real risk here, but like, yeah, he Cyber Dragon Banisher Radiances me out of nowhere. And coincidentally, that deals with my field perfectly. But it is known that I have Treeborn Frogs in the grave and a Caius in hand, so like, even this field isn't much. All right, so we have a pair of Junk Synchrons now, and I'm thinking about what I want to do, because I can do anything to him, and it'll result in me winning the game. I could literally go Summon Brionic right now, bounce both his monsters and attack, but this is something that I do in Yu-Gi-Oh! Where it's kind of like you play with your food a little bit. I like to get games to a point where you can't lose the game, and I think I've gotten there, like basically my first turn when I set Dust Tornado. I didn't really see a way for him to come out of that with the Heavy Storm in my hand. So since the game started, I've pretty much just been winning, and I don't really see a way for him to not lose. So right here, I decided to just do like a cheeky play. And I'm going to make Catastor, attack over Banisher, and then main phase 2 contact on his Cyber Dragon. This is literally just for funsies, but I figure, you know, everyone's watching. Why not? It's nice when you see Catastor contact with a Cyber Dragon. Now he has 0 cards to my 5, so I officially have +5, and I'm feeling good. And that's game. He drew Solemn for turn. Pretty easy game. Yeah, these kind of anti-meta decks, if you draw back row removal, or if you draw Gores, it's just GG. It looks like that even if I had not drawn back row removal, I was still favored to win this one because his back rows were bottomless and he had a face-up D-Fisher. And the Gores just rode out. Like all my attacks went through and everything, and nothing really stopped any of my plays. So like bottomless doesn't really do anything to Gores. Yeah, so it's just a pretty straightforward and easy game. All right, so this is actually the finals. This is against the Ice Queen, who is playing Diva Hero. I think I was able to watch one of the games that she was in earlier, so I knew that she was on Diva Hero. And I think that the Frog deck has a favorable matchup against Diva Hero. I think it is the better Miracle Fusion deck because our water monsters are just better than theirs, and also it's hard to OTK the Frog deck when it's playing Threatening Roars and Battle Fader and Gores and stuff like that. So the Diva Hero deck wants to OTK, but it's kind of hard to do so through dupe blocks and all of the cards I already aforementioned. Also, Monarchs are really good against Synchros in general. There's no Synchro in the game that can deal with a Caius. There's no Synchro that really even deals with a Ryza. The only one that there is in the format, I think, is like Turbo Warrior, but that is in Quick Draw, and virtually no one plays that. Okay, so I win the die roll, and again, my hand is just really, really good. I have access to Treeborn Frog. There's like an 80% chance that I open with access to Treeborn Frog. When you consider 3 copies of Substitute, 3 copies of Swap Frog, 2 actual Treeborn Frogs, 1 for 1. And yeah, so my deck has a lot of good openings. Also with the 3 Stratos, that's also a perfectly fine opening. So I'm just going to go Swap Frog, send, bounce. I don't have any fear of actually dying against Diva Hero turn 1. It can happen. Like this deck can actually OTK you from no cards on the field, but it requires like the craziest hand ever. And I just don't believe that they're going to have that. I think it needs Grepher, Malicious, Diva to start, and then Miracle Fusion. So it's like Grepher, Malicious, Diva, Miracle Fusion. So it's a 4-card combo. And some of the cards they do play 3 of. They play 3 Miracle, they play 3 Divas, they play 2 Malicious, and a Rhoda and a Grepher. So there's 2 copies of both of those cards. So it is not very likely that any deck opens up with a 4-card combo, and I just don't believe that that's going to happen to me right here. So I opt to, with no defense in my hand, I'm just going to pass. Also, when you do this with the Frog deck, everyone just thinks that you have Gores anyway, or at least they have to have some caution about attacking into your, attacking your life points directly turn 1, because you could just have Gores, and sometimes Gores can be disastrous really, really early on, or just depending on what your hand is. So she's just going to go Diva off the bat into Gilman, and wants to deal the full 2400 damage. So usually when people do this play, they will attack with these 2 monsters, because what happens is, oh, it's 2300 damage actually. So it's only 100 damage less than the Android. But what it accomplishes is that the Gores token will be much weaker, because the Gores token will just be 1700. And things like Stratos can beat it. Things like Grepher can crash with it. But I guess Ice Queen is like, I don't believe you have Gores. I don't care if you get a 2400 token. Even if you do have Gores, so I'm just going to attack with the Android and do the extra 100 damage. I personally do not think that this is correct, though, if I'm being honest. I think that, like, I just can't imagine that 100 damage is going to matter. And if you can just do a little less damage and minimize Gorz' impact, I think you should. So, all right. Set 2 back row, gain 600. Perfectly fine first turn. So I have access to Treeborn Frog. Everything's going really, really well. And this is my second turn. My hand is absolutely cracked. So I'm just going to take this Android because I also feel like if you opened up Summon Diva, make Android attack and set back rows pass, I don't think you have much, if I'm being perfectly honest. Like that, this is a sign of weakness to me. Like doing this turn 1 with the Diva Hero deck, I am not a Diva Hero expert, but I've played against a true hero enough to just know that this is not an ideal opening. This is something that you do when you don't really have anything else to do, right? Like if you had a Sangana set or something, you would probably do that. I think even if you had a Snowman Eater, you might set that too, just because the chances of running into, like I said, that turn 1 Gorz could be disastrous. And Diva just does a lot more later in the game when you have an actual little bit of a setup. So I think that the hand is kind of weak. So I'm going to use this Econ immediately. Normally I try to hold this card for when my opponent has a real board. But again, I just don't believe that her hand is very good. So take, bring back Treeborn, attack. It's free to do this. So I almost even the score. So we're both, you know, down 2,400, but then she gained the 600. I tribute it and I go for Ryza. And this is also me saying that I don't think you have a good hand because I want to basically keep your hand being bad. So I'm going to summon the Ryza here to try to essentially skip your draw phase. So Ryza just resolves, nothing gets chained. Really, really, really good sign for me. Really, really bad telling for Ice Queen. Because at the very least, like Bottomless or Torrential, they're not the best here, but it's better than just me knowing that that back row didn't do anything to my attack. It didn't do anything to my Econ. It didn't do anything to my Ryza. Like nothing happened. It could still be a battle trap though, of course, because I don't think that you would Mirror Force your own Android if I Econ and took it. So it could still be something like Mirror Force, but the fact that this just resolved and nothing got chained is really, really bad. Okay, so here she draws and goes MST on my back row. It's actually real. It's kind of annoying because I play 3 Threatening Roar and 1 Mirror Force, and I rarely get to use Mirror Force like ever. Like I can't remember the last time I actually got to Mirror Force for somebody for a good value, but no one respects it in the Frog deck anyway. So theoretically it can hit really, really hard, but it just like, for me, it just has not been happening yet. And I'm waiting for the day where I get a really juicy Mirror Force when a person just assumes it's Threatening Roar. All right, so I rip another Caius. I already had one, so I didn't need this. I also could, if I had no other Monarchs, I could also just special swap Frog by discarding Dupe and bounce Ryza into my hand and then Ryza again. I know it's going to go through because it went through last turn and nothing has changed. So even if I didn't have any of these cards, like I already had this one and I drew a second one, even if I didn't have any of this though, like this is just a perfectly good play where you can lock your opponent into these 4 cards like forever. So let's see what happens. All right, so Snowman Eater, like I said, I didn't think the hand was really strong. This is further proof that the hand is not really strong, especially against this deck. Like this is why I think that the matchup is in Frog's favor, because set monsters absolutely suck against Frogs. They are really, really bad. Hamsters, Raikou, Snowman Eaters, all of them. They're all terrible against Monarchs, obviously. And Ryza really makes them bad. It's one of the only ways the Christia Sworn deck can like lose to Frogs is when they draw their Hamsters or Raikous and you just keep spinning it to the top or whatever. But yeah, this is really good for me. Really good position. So the game is basically over. Wing Blast. All right, so this looks like she went for Malicious into Miracle Fusion. I'm guessing to get the Malicious out of the deck, also to not draw it later at any point. And so instead of banishing the Malicious that was in the graveyard and leaving one in deck, she banished it, summoned, and then just activated Miracle Fusion, attacked over my Monarch. I already have an out for this, a pretty good out at that. I could choose how I want to deal with the Absolute Zero next turn. All right, so at this point, we're just Caius galore. I always feel weird about you know, wing blasting a Caius does not feel good. It just does not feel good, especially when your opponent has access to Treeborn Frog. And that's kind of the game state that we're in right now, where I got my Caius back. So even though she didn't know I already had a Caius before the wing blast, it's like, well, you gave me the one that was on the field, and it perfectly outs your absolute zero, and it leaves you with no heroes. So all future Miracle Fusions will be dead from here on out. Because I'm probably going to out it with Caius, because it's just the best way to out it. That way, it takes away a water and a hero. An Infernal Prodigy. And then this is met with a D Prison, so I am currently like basically +4. I'm going to draw and have 6 cards with the Treeborn Frog to the 1, so I'm +5 once I draw. And here is a Braionic play. Oh, wait, I went for Junk Archer for style, but it could have just been Braionic. All right, a much better opening. Stratos, turn 1, set back row pass. So I have a lot to think about with this hand, because I could go 2 ways. I could just go Soul Exchange, Vanity's Fiend outright, and that would be really good. Or I could go Soul Exchange, Substitute. So here's the thing. Soul Exchange Substitute is broken as hell, and the only time that it's not is if this back row is 1 card in Yu-Gi-Oh, and that would have to be Solemn Judgment. Because if you go Soul Exchange, right, and your opponent's like, okay, Soul Exchange is fine, and then you go Summon Substitute, it's really, really awkward if they have Solemn Judgment, because now you just wasted Soul Exchange and you used your normal summon, so there's nothing that you can do with the Soul Exchange, so you just go neg. I thought really long and hard about which one I wanted to do, because one is safe. The Vanity's Fiend play is safe, because if I go Soul Exchange, Vanity's Fiend, even if he has Solemn, even if she has Solemn, it doesn't matter, because I still at least got the Stratos off the field. It got tributed, and yeah, we trade a little bit more favorably there, but it's still not even that good, even if I did the Vanity's Fiend, because it's a Stratos that I would be tributing anyway, which already replaced itself. So after a long deliberation, I opted to go for, you don't have Solemn Judgment. It is the only card that can stop this play. I just don't believe you have that, and I'm not going to play around that one of right now. It's just not worth it. I think that this is the stronger play to just get my full deck dumped, and I still have Soul Exchange Vanity's Fiend. This also made it a little easier to make the decision, because I drew a second Soul Exchange, and that's like, all right, well, I still have the same play next turn if something goes wrong, and this is really, really strong, so we're just going to do full-on dump. Okay, so here I decided to actually leave a Dupe Frog in deck on purpose, and that's because I think that this is still really, really hard to break. You would need something like a Caius, and I still have that covered again with this, so I'm just putting her on You Better Have It. And the Caius does come down. It's like, cool. Future Fusion. Now this was a bit much. I was not a fan of the Future Fusion main phase 2. Kind of caught me off guard. So I assumed that this is what was drawn for a turn. Okay, so I draw Gores. He's a turn. No, it's not even a turn late, because I substituted in attack mode. So it wouldn't have mattered if I had Gores in my last turn. I guess in this case he's actually right on time. So I decide I don't really want to Soul Exchange Vanities right here. Now, this is the obvious play to just do that, because, Future Fusion will be cut off and everything, but the Gores makes me really confident that I'm going to get a really good Gores drop here. And then I can reversal with Gores, the Gores token, and Treeborn coming back to be tributed for Vanity's Fiend, and then I get to cut the Future Fusion off right before the Absolute Zero will come out. If I put Vanity's Fiend out right now, and she outs the Vanity's Fiend, the Future Fusion will then resolve, in another turn, and that would really suck. So I think it's best I don't have to worry about the threat of Future Fusion right now. The only thing I do have to worry about is if she got aggressive and played a Miracle Fusion out of her hand on the very next turn. That would suck a lot. So instead, fucking Spine Gilman comes out. And I'm like, perfect. This is exactly what I wanted. This is literally exactly what I wanted. Now I'm just praying please don't set any traps. Like, just do what you just did and pass. You haven't had really any traps so far, so please don't set any traps. No traps were set. And this is just busted. This is so insane. So I can beat over the entire field, do a good amount of damage. And so now we're pretty close in life points. The situation comes down to you need to have brain control now in order to play the game. The barrier of entry for this game is now brain control. If you do not have brain control, you lose the game on the spot. Like, this game is super over without brain control. So now it's the second turn. Future Fusion can't actually resolve because the Vanity's Fiend. And so this is just dead now. And it also prevents, if she plays Gores, it prevents that from ever coming out because this is just going to sit here forever now. I could also be rude and use Ryza on it at some point later in the game if it came down to it, just to guarantee that it's like not a good draw, because there isn't really much else to send at this point. All right, so as I said, brain control was the barrier of entry. She happened to actually have it. I'm not mad at it at all. My position is still perfectly fine. So there's a Miracle Fusion. So the Miracle Fusion part was a bit annoying because it's like, damn, brain and Miracle Fusion. All right, cool. I accept. I do have an outside situation, but I am pretty low on life points. And so if I clear 0, it becomes a little awkward because then I'm just open and I don't feel comfortable with that. So I might have to do like a soul exchange play into Ryza, the blatant malicious that she just tributed for. And I draw the Battle Fader, so I was like, oh, well, that actually makes me feel very safe now, because really nothing can go wrong. So I do the Soul Exchange. I make her draw Malicious, which at the time felt really, really good, and judging by the fact that she drew and passed, it was really good. Now I have DD Crow. It is a little late for the Crow. I don't know if it would have ever mattered in this game. I don't remember exactly how it all played out, but I draw a Crow here, and it's like, I could use this when a Malicious goes to grave. So I really didn't want to draw a Unifrog. That's the reason why I dumped it. It makes sense because I want this to stay on the field forever. So here comes a Diva. Diva, get Diva. So I was wondering what was going on, and then she sets a back row, and I'm like, all right, the only card in hand is Malicious. Oh, I see what you're trying to do. This makes a lot of sense. So this is probably a battle trap is what I tell myself, because this play doesn't make sense unless this is a battle trap. So I draw for turn, and I see Junk Synchron, but I really don't have to use Junk Synchron here. Swap Frog is perfectly fine to deal with the situation. So I just put the Swap Frog out there and I attack. It's the same exact thing, and it doesn't expose my power play. So I just do this, I attack, because I just want to kill one of them so that way she can't do the malicious play if I do it this way, where, you know, one of these would get tributed for malicious and then it would be a level 8. So I do this and I get Mirror Forced, and then here comes malicious, and this looks really good on paper, right? Like, this looks like a really good situation. Except this is some outside of the game stuff that happened here, but I had my doorbell ring and like ring nonstop. I think I ordered a pizza because it was Friday night, but my doorbell ring was ringing nonstop. So I had to step away, and I don't know why I didn't just say like, hold on, be right back or something. So I decided I'm just going to run real quick to my door. And when I came back, it was kind of funny, but there was just game on board. Like, I didn't get a chance to use my Crow and malicious, which is what I intended to do. But when I came back to my desk, I just saw, like, if you could actually see how long it takes me to respond to that, there's actually a good amount of time before this Battle Fader gets dropped and this Treeborn Frog goes to grave, because I literally just wasn't at my desk at all. But I think that just having these two cards, no matter what, it was just game, right? Like, this is just too much. Because if you look at the situation, at the very least, I could just Black Rose this. At the very least, bring back Treeborn Frog, summon Junk Synchron, bring back a 2, so you have Junk Synchron and a 2 is 5, Treeborn and the Battle Fader is 7. So I could just Black Rose this at like worst case scenario. We'll just Black Rose this field. I draw Econ, and this is one of the moments where I realized that I am not playing just 2 Econs anymore. I'm going up to 3 copies. There was this moment right here where I say, you know what? There are so many situations where this card is just ruinous, and I want to have it all the time, so yeah. And the writing's on the wall. Everything is set up for me to win. GG. Here's another instance where I could have used Junk Archer technically to banish the Colossal Fighter instead of Brionic. Like if let's say I had used this DD Crow on Malicious, I mean at the same time, I guess I wouldn't even have had to use Battle Fader because the Colossal Fighter would have been walled out by Treeborn Frog. So the whole game would actually play out a bit differently there. But yeah, if I needed to, for whatever reason, I could have made Junk Archer instead of Brionic, and it would have been the exact same thing. But this time I decided to go for the Brionic to make Absolute Zero a little bigger and just attack with 1 monster for game. And yeah, that was the end of this. So this was BeastMode Circuit Series 5. I hope to play in more of these tournaments in the future. I really enjoyed myself. And I hope that you guys also check it out, subscribe to his channel, join his Discord server, all that good stuff.